Hello, and welcome back to Flyer Sports. I'm Joe Sullivan.
I'm Sean Vitalis.
This is the last episode of the semester, and we would like to thank you all for your support throughout our first year.
Moving along to men's basketball, we must inform you with the news of all A10 players, Holmes and Camara, declaring for the draft. The former A10 Rookie of the Year and the conference rebounding leader will be greatly missed.
Holmes was named most outstanding player for his efforts in the A10 tournament this season. In his final year as a Flyer, he averaged 18 points per game with 8 rebounds. He also led the A10 in blocks. His final performance as a Flyer featured a 28-16 effort that fell just short of the championship. We wish him the best and hope he has a long career in the sport. Obviously a tough loss to VCU in that A10 championship game in a season where the Dayton Flyers, again, were preseason first in the A10 and obviously top 25 team in the AP poll. A lot of expectations for Coach Grant and his squad, and just really didn't deliver this season.
Yeah, it's definitely a disappointing, road from beginning to end. Faced a lot of different injuries and some trials and tribulations. Just one freshman that was really contributing in Mike Sharv-Jomps, who has also left. I mean, he's got some workouts pre-draft, one coming up with the Jazz in the next few days. So with just one new contributor, I know a big thing around the team was that so much older and so much more experience than the previous year. Last year, one of the youngest teams, if not the youngest, in the NCAA, now coming in, all those freshmen and a few sophomores are now all sophomores and a few juniors. And so I know a big thing that was discussed was, leadership and experience, and how that would translate into A10 play. And there was discussions of going, unbeaten in A10 play, a perfect conference record, and like you said, 24 in the preseason, and obviously not in the top 64 by the end of the season in the net ranking, not getting that bid. And Flyers actually declining to play other postseason tournaments. A lot of that was due to injury with the Flyers' recent run-ins in the past year or two, which that all makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I think that not very many, ESPN, TNT analysts, all of that would have projected the Flyers to take that tumble. I mean, they seemed like, not a team to compete for a top 4 spot maybe in March, but definitely a lock to be somewhere in those front runners.
Yeah, and you talk about the notion, really, what it was last year. And obviously, 65th team in the NCAA at the end of the year, one spot away from making the NCAA tournament. And really, the talk around town is we're getting all these guys back, right? A young squad, like you said, one of the youngest in the country. And, this year just really flew by and was just disappointing from head to toe. And with all these guys leaving, it's just not the same story what's going to be going into next year, as, like we said, Holmes and Camara will be leaving the Dayton Flyers and will be heading into pro ball.
Yeah, and that's not the only losses that the Flyers have seen already. Mustafa Amzil, he'll be headed to New Mexico. So we've lost him as well. And then we've also had some surgeries with some of our guards early in the offseason. Malachi Smith received surgery on those ankles, so hopefully he'll be ready to go. Now that's another question is, are we going to have a fully healthy team, day one? Because that's something that we didn't have this year, and we were already projected so high. And so, that was a big discussion about mid-season, was like, all right, where would we be right now if we would have had this team this entire time? Obviously, Flyers have pulled in a few guys from the portal and some commitments from incoming freshmen. But, Joe, we talked about this before the show. Flyers going to play with only guys ranked 3-star and lower coming into college. And obviously there's a lot of development once you get here. And there's a ton of NBA prospects that are 0, 1, 2, 3. But, I mean, obviously, to get a freshman that's a 4-star or 5-star, that'd be an incredible pull, especially at the A10 level.
Yeah, and safe to say it's really a clean slate after this offseason. And obviously Malachi Smith coming back, working through that foot injury that he just had right after the end of the year. Kobe Brea, another guy who is working on an injury and trying to get back healthy for this Dayton Flyers squad. And those are two guys that are going to have to play a huge role going into next season. Kobe Elvis, another guy who, was struggled throughout the year and really in the A10 tournament. We did not see him play in that semifinal or championship game. and really just been a tough road, obviously injury wise and transfers. But with some guys coming in, the veterans on this team, which is really going to be Malachi Smith, Kobe Elvis, and Kobe Brea, are really going to have to step up big without Tumani Camara and Deron Holmes.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested to see how the offense changes. I mean, our offense was so centered around Tumani and Deron, both big men, a lot of post play. And we're going to be a much more guard-centered team next year, and that was really our huge weakness this year. So I'm very interested to see, first of all, how those roles get filled in Deron and Tumani, our biggest losses. Who are we going to see playing that 4 and 5? We do have a transfer coming in from Buffalo. That's a promising prospect. But as well, how are these guards going to continue to work between their sophomore and junior year? And what's that offense going to look like? Because the Flyers, I mean, it's not a secret, one of the slowest offenses in all of the NCAA, one of the best defenses, and not a high production offense. And how is that going to change? With our 3-point shooting, Kobe Brea, obviously one of the better 3-point shooters in all of the A10. Mostly used off the bench. Saw him start some when there was some injuries. Returned to the bench at the end of the season. Are we going to see him in the starting lineup? And just what is all of that change going to look like over the next year?
Very guard-heavy team going into next year, and obviously losing one of the best front courts in the country with Camara and Holmes. We saw Camara, didn't make a full-on decision after the end of the year, and it kind of took a little bit. Obviously, we saw Amzil hit the portal, RJ Blakeney hit the portal, as well as Amafle and Mike Sharaf-Jones, who Sharaf-Jones will be playing pro ball, like you said, has a few workouts with some NBA teams. But with Camara, it didn't really make a decision until later, and took the invite to the Pitt Invitational, where he was playing against some of the best college prospects from this last year, and just trying to get some exposure to NBA scouts and pro scouts going into this offseason, and played fantastic. Was actually on the first all-team for the Pitt Invitational. Looked great out there, and despite whether he gets drafted or not, it's safe to say we'll probably see him playing a little bit of summer league ball come this June.
Yeah, no, I definitely see Camara as a guy that'll be in the summer league somewhere. He'll definitely get picked up. The raw physical aspects of his game, it's stuff that you can't teach. I mean, he's really big on the intangibles, and that's definitely going to get him to the next level. Whether he'll stick around NBA level play, I'm not sure, but I mean, he's a guarantee to be able to play overseas, and that's what you see a lot of A10 guys do. Obviously, Flyers have Obi Toppin playing for the Knicks right now in the playoffs, but it's not too often that you see all these A10 guys going to the league. Deron Holmes, he's another one to discuss. I mean, decided to put his name in, wasn't flashy about it. I feel like that was the most Dayton basketball way to do that. Put his name in, didn't make a huge formal announcement, but got his name in right before the deadline. He was a guy that preseason was ranked as a top 20 prospect for the draft. Now he's looking like a mid-second rounder, early second rounder at best. So very interested to see what comes out of his. I'm sure that he has pre-draft workouts as well, just like Mike Sharaf-Jones is doing. So I'm very interested to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, and Holmes is another guy who's really been doing, workouts for scouts and NBA teams for a while, even after the season, and still being able to keep his eligibility going on to the offseason in the summer. But again, looks like he will be taking his talents pro. And I think another guy who, if he doesn't get drafted in the second round, definitely an NBA Summer League team is definitely going to pick him up, because I think both of those players, again, just good enough to play pro ball somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've dominated the A10 the past year or two. Deron Holmes, A10 Rookie of the Year, his freshman year. Tumani Camara, obviously transferring from Georgia. He's a Power 5 talent and has excelled in his role here at Dayton. And yeah, best of luck to them over the next few months. I think the most interesting out of the three that are headed pro has to be Mike Sharaf-Jones. He's a guy that nobody really saw going pro, myself included. I really thought that he would come back for a second year. I saw him kind of similarly to Jaden Ivey at Purdue a few years ago, where really balled out that 1 year, decided to come back, and then was first team Big Ten top 5 pick. He could have got drafted the year prior. But came back for some extra, just building on his game and experience and stuff. But Mike is going the one and done route, and that's something you really don't see at Dayton So very interested to see what comes out of Mike Sharp-Jumps. Physically, a 6'8" point guard that can really pass the ball. We saw his vision and his playmaking ability. But I think that was the most surprising move.
Yeah, and Sharif Jumps, a guy who, after the year, a lot of people thought maybe he might hit the transfer portal, and very questionable. But the NBA draft, again, a lot of people didn't see it with the season that he had. Again, played a vital role in the beginning of the year, obviously with those injuries to Malachi Smith and Kobe Elvis. Later down the road, had to become a role player and come off that bench and be big for Anthony Grant. Definitely something to look forward to, and will be an interesting pro career for Sharif Jumps. But going into next year, it's really not a completely new team, but a lot of new guys who could play a huge role in what could be Anthony Grant's last season as a Dayton Flyer head coach. We saw a lot of moves in the A-10 with Ace Baldwin, who'll be taking his talents to Penn State, VCU, Deloche, another guy who will be headed over to the Big Ten. He'll be playing for Indiana. And going into next year, it's going to be a different environment in the A-10. And obviously with that guard-heavy team coming off the season with Camara and Holmes, who were huge in that front court for the Dayton Flyers, Anthony Grant is going to have a handful after all the criticism that he has received over the past few seasons as the Dayton Flyers head coach. And going into what could be his last straw as the Dayton Flyers head coach, it's going to be interesting to see what he does in the A-10 next year.
Yeah, Joe, I think that it's going to have to be a big year for the Flyers, and this is a team that, as of right now, not too much hype around the team for next year. Obviously, there was so much going into this, or I should say now the previous season, going into next year with the loss of Sharif-Jumps, Holmes, and Camara, as well as Amzil and Blakeney. All of them fan favorites and real contributors to the team. But I think he's going to have to step up and really impress. The whole goal for the Flyers has been postseason success, and obviously 2020 was kind of taken away from the program, but all the previous years, he came after an Elite Eight run, and we really haven't seen anything close to that in his era here as our head coach. And he's had the teams to get some postseason play done. Obviously, you think about last year's 65th team. And then this year started inside the top 25, second time in program history that's ever been thrown around for the Flyers as a preseason ranking. And most teams would look at the season that we had and call it a success. For most programs that are a mid-major team and at the A-10 level, it was a good year. But at the same time, the Flyers are trying to put themselves on a different level. The Big East has been thrown around for years for the Flyers, but when you're stuck around second, third, and fourth team, mediocrity of success, not playing in the March Madness tournament, going NIT, or to some of these smaller national tournaments, you can't get to that next level, and I think that's where the Flyers need to go. And Anthony Grant, I don't know how possible it is to make a tourney run next year, but I think wherever the mark is set, he's going to have to hit that or exceed to really keep his time here.
And it feels like one last opportunity for Coach Anthony Grant going into next year, a completely new team really for the Dayton Flyers, and it feels like a year where anything to make the NCAA tournament. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Flyer Sports here on Flyer TV. We thank you so much for your support this entire year, as we, again, will be covering Dayton sports going into next year and keeping up on updates over the summer. You can follow us on Instagram at Flyer Sports TV. For Sean Vitalis, I'm Joe Sullivan, and we'll see you next time here on Flyer Sports.